Chapter 21. Self-hatred is a sin. The next day was the beginning of challenging and rigorous training for the new group of warriors that had just joined the newfound family. It was as if the wedding hadn't happened, other than the fact that Jonathan and Joy were smiling at each other throughout the day. The hours, days, and weeks had passed, and before long 3 months. The men and women performed jeûn, read the Torah, and learn the weaponry and fighting techniques of Wanyenyekevu and the other warriors. Each warrior named their group after animals for competition purposes, and trained their groups just as hard as Wanyenyekevu had taught them. Some, like Obe and Daniel, taught even harder. Daniel named his group the dragons, Obe's group the boars, Joam was the tigers, Jonathan, now called Aldhib, the wolves, Elisha, black mamba, Elijah, apes, Grace, praying mantis, Joy, scorpions, and Mercy were the panthers. The friendly competitions lasted months, and then as a whole, they were taught by Wanyenyekevu for 3 months how to fight as a team instead of separately, learning the Iasai Langu, the Assegai, and understanding the meaning of Umkumbi, Impi, and Awa. And, of course, finally, Point de Dieu. A total of 9 months had passed, and Sabaoth was pleased with his people's progress. They were 74 strong. Wanyenyekevu woke up early one Sunday morning around 1 a.m. and stood by the lake thinking about his family in Louisiana and all the things he had been through since he left, when he noticed Neriglissar approaching him. Neriglissar was heavy-hearted as he spoke to Wanyenyekevu. "I have learned so much from you spiritually, but my physical man is confused, and I feel much pain, because I don't know who I am." Wanyenyekevu smiled. "Have you ever wondered why I picked you to train by my side? You are a man of conviction, a humble man, selfless, and someone with those characteristics can and will always be a good leader. Now I don't know if I can say anything to comfort you, but I can tell you this: self-esteem or self-worth can help that feeling disappear. You need to find out who you are as a person, and love yourself. If you love yourself, nothing else matters, and you will eventually find everything you need in life. Family and ancestry are an important part of life, and you didn't have one. You were born a slave, and lived as one all your life. I can only imagine your pain. Face that pain, deal with that reality, and move on, my friend. For many years, my ancestors were slaves just like you were, but that was back when this country was first formed as the United States." Wanyenyekevu took a seat on the ground, followed by Neriglissar as he continued. "Years after slavery, our people went through a phase of taught self-destruction, self-hatred, and low self-esteem, and it nearly destroyed an entire generation of people. They started bleaching their skins, refusing to marry their race, which was heartbreaking, but Sabaoth stepped in and cured the hearts of his people. To be perfectly honest, the people who this country tried to destroy were the same people who led this country into salvation, but that's another story." Neriglissar's size was intimidating, but his heart was as big as he was. Tears falling from his eyes, he looked at Wanyenyekevu. "I'm ashamed of my past and confused about who I am. I understand I have to forgive myself first, but it's hard." Wanyenyekevu said. Transatlantic slave trade, or the Mafa, meaning great disaster, in Swahili, the African Holocaust, and some even called it the Holocaust of enslavement. Neriglissar said. "Excuse me?" Wanyenyekevu continued. "They robbed many of our people of their ancestry." Pointing to himself and back to Neriglissar. "Our people?" with a blank look on his face. "Our people?" Wanyenyekevu said. "Look around us. We have many nationalities that surround us at this location, living in peace. We are united with one common enemy, the Abenians, who are not of this world. But centuries ago, all black people like us were brought to this country in the transatlantic slave trade, and those already here were taken as slaves. All this took place across the Atlantic Ocean for 400 years. African men, women, and children were initially snatched from Senegambia and the Windward Coast. Slave traders later moved their operations to West Central Africa near the Kingdom of the Congo and neighboring Angola. West Africans sold West Africans from the central and western parts of the continent to European slave traders. Then, the Europeans became familiar with the territory and started capturing and selling them, themselves to the Americas. They took slaves to the Caribbean, South America, especially Brazil, then to North America because the South Atlantic economic system centered on producing crops and making goods and clothing to sell in Europe. This alone increased the numbers of African slaves needed. This was crucial to those Western European countries competing to create overseas empires.